This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Under the heading of good political freedom, we will not tell anybody what time of the day it is, except it is the morning. It is a beautiful morning. And we have the voice of Respectonomics, which is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, and Sarah Benton, co-host.
The giggler in the background.
And I'm going to have to be very clear that it is the morning, and it is a beautiful morning, and it is a beautiful day to say good morning to Sarah.
It is. Good morning, Jeremy. Good morning, everyone.
And good morning, everybody. What we're talking about here this morning is dignifying friendships. And when I was asked to talk about friendship, I kind of glibly thought, under the heading of Respectonomics, that's very straightforward. It's a question of dignity, and it's a question of giving people the freedom to have their own opinions and so on. But I have to make what I would call a testimonial confession.
Okay.
That as I looked into the whole business of friendships, we all need to do a lot of work on friendship.
Mm.
And I came out with some self-discoveries, and I have a feeling, of course, it's not for me to quiz anybody on this, but I have a feeling that some of my experience is one that mirrors in other people's lives. Roughly speaking, we talk about friends in kind of a loose sort of, oh yeah, we have friends. Yeah, I've got a lot of friends. I got a few friends, but it's almost said as almost like a throwaway statement.
Mm.
And I think it's important to come to the root of friendship and see where it actually takes us.
Right.
Because the root of friendship, in fact, is not an appendage. It's almost a function of the human being, because human beings are designed to need somebody else in their life. No man is an island, as it says in that famous poem. And the key here is we need each other. That is fundamental. You've heard that expression, somebody picks up the microphone at a shareholders meeting and says, I am a self-made man.
Right.
No, you're not. There's
Right.
no such thing, because everybody needed somebody or needs somebody or will need somebody in their lives. So the very concept of our humanity is we need friends.
So what's the purpose?
Sorry, what was that?
What's the purpose of friendship?
I think the purpose of friendship has two major contributors to it. One is it allows me to help somebody else, and it allows that other person to help me. It's very reciprocal. It's very mutual. It's very collaborative. It's a building block, and it's absolutely beautiful. It starts off, the Greeks will tell you this, that when you talk about friendship, they had three words for it. There was the eros, there was the philia, and then there was the agape. There was actually another one too, which is the friendship or the love that exists in a family, which is not the one I'm talking about here. But the one I'm talking about is, if you think about it, friendships start when one body meets another body.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know of any friendship that has intelligently continued as a result of sending text to each other. I mean, you do get those friendships that sort of, what do they call them now? Email friendships and that. But they're not really the kinds of friendships where you can open up to the other person in the way that you think of two friends that can actually talk to each other openly and plainly.
Interesting. I'm just going to toss this out there again to be devil's advocate.
No, we need that.
I think that there are a lot of people out there, and it could be generational. What they've been raised on, or the exposure that they've had, or what's available to them. I would err to say, I do think in some circumstances or situations that some individuals may feel more comfortable. I don't want to say hiding, but maybe more comfortable behind a phone, let's per se. So whether it's through talking or through texting or through an email, sharing their actual feelings because they almost feel like there's a safety
Hmm.
component behind that. So I'm just going to toss that out there.
No, that is not a toss out, and it is not. In fact, it's totally consistent because the eros part of it is the body to the body. The
Right.
part you're talking about is the philia, which is the friendship we have with each other.
Mhm.
So the body may have started it. In your case, you're saying, well, no, it happened through texting or
Right.
some electronic mechanism.
Right.
So that's fine. But then it takes you through to the philia, which is where you have this affection for each other. And that affection for one another, that friendship then has the ability for two people to help each other. The one problem with call it the texting formula. And I understand full well that it's technological and it's age related, it's cultural and so on. But the trouble is, it is also an arrangement that allows a certain amount of camouflage to filter in.
Absolutely, for sure.
So that's the resistance. The third one is the agape under the Greek heading.
Mhm.
And that is where the soul meets the soul of the other person.
Mm.
And I'm not sure I could ever see a soul meeting another soul electronically. I've
Um,
never seen it happen. I'm not saying that we can't use texting as an enabling tool, as a wonderful way to bring each other up to date, share ideas. I mean, you and I do this.
Sure.
That's nothing wrong with it.
We use a myriad of
Exactly.
there's a
But
myriad.
I only want to be very careful to point out that the value of a friendship is extraordinary. There are different places within which it can occur. They are very personal. So, in other words, you're quite right. For somebody, electronically is more important than the bodily connection. I come from a world of bodily connections.
Right.
It
So
doesn't make
could we maybe say or put it out there that it's a personal journey?
Absolutely. It is a personal journey. But what I really want to emphasize is this, that the value of a friendship is incalculable. And I think we have become very easy to look at friendships as almost in that sort of ghastly throwaway pattern. You know,
Mhm.
you buy things and they say throw away the carton or throw it away. It's
Right.
become a bit like that.
Mm.
It's become very immediate. Gosh, he's a great friend of mine. She's a great friend of mine. And there really hasn't been this process of going through the body and the mind and the soul. It's a very instant kind of thing.
Right.
The reason I'm emphasizing friendship today,
Yeah.
there is a reason. Because first of all, it by definition, it's congruent with our humanity.
Right.
That's, I think, straightforward. But let me put one more thought your way. I believe we live in a world of fear and anger, isolation, a world of loneliness.
Anxiety.
Hmm. I do believe that. And those are bad enough. But I don't think it takes rocket science to figure out that the pinions that hold the world together today, whether they be the climate, food, geography, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
I believe there are problems out there that we haven't actually ever seen before. Or if we
Right.
have, they were monumental. You talk about catastrophes, you talk about people who are warring with other people. You talk about a lot of things. You talk about the debt in the world today. I mean, you add all these things up. And what I'm getting to is it is, in fact, a frightening picture.
Right.
And I would love to say, well, those are things we're frightened about today, but tomorrow we'll be frightened about something else. Great.
Right.
If it's that straightforward, we're okay. I don't think it is. I think that there's a real risk here of the footings being pulled away from all of us. And in that event, can you think of anything more important than one human being in a friendship relationship with another?
Mhm.
In other words, I think it is as much, it's an active kind of approach, but it's also one that has a degree of prevention in it, a degree of insurance in it. It's an awful thing to look at friendship as an insurance policy. But if things do go wrong, my word, we're going to need each other.
Right.
And I think it's a good idea to practice that. And I think that as we come together more and more, and one of the things about a friendship is you have to come out of yourself to be a friend. You and I have created a friendship by coming out of ourselves. You know, I mean, if our audience knew that we actually met at a visitation,
Right.
then we really effectively knew nothing about each other before that, and the friendship has developed right the way from there.
If you also think of it from that vantage point as well, I was going to say friendship is about connection as well.
Hmm.
You and I became friends as a result of a mutual connection.
Right,
So kind of, connecting the dots
right.
along the way, right?
Very important, because that means, in other words, when you and I become friends, we then broaden out the spectrum of other people being able to become friends. And it's quite true. Our commonality was your late uncle, Derek. And because of him, we became friends. And I pray and hope that as a result of our friendship, other people will come into friendships
Right.
that they may not have otherwise had the opportunity to do.
Exactly.
So that's one thing. The other thing about friendship is this, though. If you've noticed, we've talked a bit about this throwaway society, the way that friendships are allowed to sort of just get diluted.
Yeah.
But there's another concept as well here, and that is it's much, much easier to say, I love everybody,
Mhm.
than to say to an individual, you are my friend.
Mm.
To state to somebody, you are my friend, takes a certain amount of courage, it takes conviction, and it runs a risk. The other person might say, glad you are.
Right.
And you can get rejection there, and it can be naturally, to make the obvious point, to me obvious, it's very painful when that happens. But I think we owe it to one another to be able to say, you are my friend.
Mhm.
The concept of I love somebody sounds wonderful, and ancient literature talks a lot about love and its many dimensions. Unfortunately, love today has become a password where the community leader stands up and says, I love you all.
Right.
And you get, I love chocolate ice cream. It's become a word that's got a lot of, diluted application to it. But to say to somebody, you are my friend, is deep, it's personal, it's authentic, and it can only come from you.
Tell me about, I've heard you talk before about turn the cube.
Well, turn the cube is, again, goes back to your uncle.
Mm.
And the turning the cube is a fascinating part of a friendship. And you and I, fortunately, do it very easily. And the turning the cube is that you have a cube, that you are looking at one side of it and I'm looking at the other side of it. By definition, there's a physicality.
Right.
You have, put a cube in front of you, I've got one here actually. I don't know. Oh, you can't see it. But anyway, but there's a cube and you look at it one side and I'm looking at the other side. Turning the cube is a wonderful way of looking at the same situation from the other person's point of view. The one thing we must remember in a friendship, true friendship, is the ability to see the other person. That's called being empathetic.
Yes.
But it is also important that we are vulnerable. And a classic example of this last week was a scathing letter I received about one of our podcasts from somebody that I regard as a good friend. And I know full well that his intentions were not to diminish me, they were to build me up.
Right.
But that building up could only come as a result of my teachability, that I had to be able to be taught. And a
Mm.
friendship needs to have that opening in it, that I am accessible to learning from you.
Right.
And you do it to me, for heaven's sake. You say to me, well, in the HR world, it doesn't work that way, or it does work this way, or whatever it is. But it's a very important thing that a friendship is allowed to come to the cube and look at it from both points of view, and both of us to recognize the enormous strength that happens when you get two people together.
Well,
We
we
were
all come
just,
from different perspectives,
yeah,
different experiences that you bring to the table,
yeah,
so it
yeah,
can alter our
yeah,
perceptions in
yeah,
comparison to
yeah.
other people, right? So it's
And,
important to be aware of that.
and my closing comment is this, that if we engage in friendship,
Mhm.
that is something that I can do personally. I
Right.
can take responsibility for it. I can actually say to somebody, you are my friend. I can get out of myself. In other words, get away from the sort of what do I look like externally and allow my internals to be available to somebody else. And when I do that and create a friendship, we've got a far better chance of bringing about that sense of harmony, that sense of peacefulness, the sense of non-anger, non-contradiction to one another. In other words, to produce the kind of world that, quite frankly, most of us would cherish. And
Right.
certainly is a world that we would like to pass on to our children and grandchildren.
Right. One quick thought, and I know you and I have chatted about this offline. What about friendships that no longer, I don't want to say serve us or serve each other,
Mhm.
because like you said, it's reciprocity. How do people navigate or manage, or should they think about maybe perhaps friendships that, you know, did well in a certain time
Mhm.
or particular
Yeah.
circumstance, but maybe are no longer positive?
Well, I think I know somebody who is smarter than I am. And now you might not believe that, but I'm going to be humble for a moment and say there is somebody smarter than I am.
Mm,
He's no longer with us. His name was King Solomon.
okay.
And Solomon was renowned for his wisdom, was he not?
Yeah.
King Solomon said, "To everything there is a season."
Mhm.
So that it is quite true what you have said.
Right.
There's a friendship that works today that may not work tomorrow,
Right.
and the list goes on. I will put it to us this way. When there's a friendship that we've had, we've enjoyed, and we've invested in,
Yes.
let's not be naive about that. There's a huge emotional investment in a friendship.
Absolutely.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that a friendship that, should we call it not working today, just use that expression. If it's not working today, it's actually in hibernation. And
And I
it's
think it's okay. I think people need to
absolutely.
or accept or acknowledge that it's okay. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a negative thing.
No,
Doesn't mean you have to take
no,
great action or you
no,
need to
no,
grandstand it
no,
or,
no.
I
Yeah.
think it's just an acceptance or an acknowledgement, and it doesn't mean you need to be unkind or sever
No,
something, say.
no.
It's simply in
It's
hibernation.
a time of hibernation.
I think that's a really nice
Yeah,
way to
yeah.
phrase it.
So that's how I think we should handle our friendships, and I think we should put friendships at the top of the table.
I
And
love it.
since I've got an audience, I can say this. Sarah,
Yes.
you are my friend.
And you are mine,
On
and
that
I'm
ca and
grateful for the friendship.
same here. And on that basis, I rest my case.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sarah.